Hello again from your friend Jim Ransom. We've got an interesting congeries of poems to read today, but first I need to give a shout out to my granddaughter Lauren, who is having her birthday today, and please have many more happy ones, my dear Lauren. Now then, we're going to have a variety of poems today, and except for the first two, they have no common thread. But the first two are about Emily Dickinson, who has a strong place in American poetry. Even though she was so shy, she would probably be embarrassed to find that she had this exalted place in American poetry. The first poem is by Ruth Moss, and it will need no explanation. You've had me read before from this book, Valentine, which is Ruth's collection of her poems. And this one's called Homage, or Homage. And I'll proceed to read it here. I made the graveyard pilgrimage to see the old New England plot, the grave of Emily. An iron fence around the stone held sway in keeping all admirers away, but didn't stop ecstatic wild nights quotes or scribbled praises left on many grass-stained notes. I was a young girl then and quite obsessed, so went there hoping my verse could be judged and blessed, as if her simple greatness could be found and passed from some cold oracle in the ground to lend my work her authenticity, and stroke the hopeful feathers of my vanity. But the belle of Amherst held her secrets dear, and spoke no word of instructions in my ear. She was, to such requests as mine, immune, consigned to immortality that afternoon. I left the grave and never went again, although I still write poems every now and then. That poem not only is a wonderful poem, but it also showcases Ruth's very great talent for giving us a little twist of irony or humor at the end of it. Now then, another fine Kansas poet is Roy Beckmeyer. His family moved to Kansas when he was quite young from Illinois, where they had a town named after them. It was called Beckmeyer. Now, why you would leave your mnemonic town is not quite clear to me, but that's what Roy did. And then he became an outstanding poet in the Kansas Poetic Congress, I guess you'd call it. This is a poem that he wrote after being inspired by a national radio piece on an Emily Dickinson recipe for coconut cake. It's called Emily Baking. I wonder if her house dress was white as flour, if she jotted lines of poetry by wiping her finger through the dusted table, if the dough rose like the images in her head, if her recipe books had stanzas scribbled on the margins, verse with meter measured as accurately as ingredients, if exotic words came smelling of coconut, if the heated glow of the stove had her wiping her brow with her apron, slant rhymes already swirling behind her eyes like batter, butter smooth. That's also a wonderful poem, and it showcases some of Beckmeyer's talents, which are vocabulary and ideas for poems that are a little bit off the beaten path. I like that about him. Now, then, the next poem is one that has some religious connotations. I guess I'd say just the thing for another nod to Lent. Because remember, in the Christian season, this is Lent. But this poem does contain some reference to a well-known saint. And it's also an ekphrastic poem. You remember our program about ekphrastic poetry, the kind that describe a painting. Well, this does a lot of things, and that's one of them. It's by a poet named William Matthews, and its title is The Wolf of Gubbio. Not the walls of the furrowed city, through which he drifted like malign sleet, nor every vigilance could stop him. He came and rent some poor soul to morsels, and ate him. There was no help nearby. So St. Francis slogged from Assisi to tame the wolf. Sasetta painted this meeting. The wolf, pert and teachable as Lassie, had laid his licentious vow-making right paw in the saint's hand, and meets with his ochre eye the saint's chastening gaze. The townspeople stand like a grove and watch. Probably one of their faces belonged to a patron who commissioned Sasetta. But which face? Art remembers a few things by forgetting many. The wolf lived on in the nearby hills, but never ate, the story goes, another citizen. Was Sasetta the last one then to see on the piazza, like dropped firewood, most of a leg and what may be a forearm gnawed from both ends, lurid with scarlet blood? None in the painting looks at this carnage and bright waste, nor thinks of the gnarled woods in which the pewter-colored wolf makes his huge home, nor measures with what work each stone was prized from the furious ground to build each house in Gubbio, and to lay a piazza atop the town, and to raise above it a tower. I think that's a lovely poem. You might complain that it's a little bloodthirsty, but and you might complain that it's not realistic to imagine that that St. Francis walked over from Assisi and tamed the wolf and went away and everything was copacetic thereafter. However, you might want to go on the internet and read some more of the story of the Wolf of Gubbio and St. Francis and their interaction. It appears that when St. Francis was approaching Gubbio, the wolf started trailing him. St. Francis became aware of that and turned around and stopped and began talking to the wolf, and managed to tame him almost instantaneously. Well, we have other evidences of St. Francis of Assisi and his particular ability to befriend and console and control animals of all kinds. So I guess we have to accept what we're told. And in this case, there's even a photograph, an early photograph, which is the painting by Sacetta, to back us up. It's most interesting to read about St. Francis online. I would encourage you to do it. Finally, to lighten things up a bit, here's a poem that I recently wrote called Brown Sugar Needs a Second Story. If I can find it here, I will indeed read it. Brown sugar needs a second story. You will need it before you need it. The soft granularity of its moving easily under your probing fingers until you get around to a recipe that calls out for brown sugar. Perhaps you just need to dust an acorn squash or make some cookies that hunger for it. Then discover, in whatever time has passed, it has solidified, unopened, into a textured block. Don't even think of pouring it. You can only open the package and feel in the drawer for a scraper, some object that can break down the crust of it, something short of a hammer. But then, a hammer is really what you need. Brown sugar is stubborn and hygroscopic. The moment you take it from the store, it becomes as rigid as a piece of granite. But I wrapped it in a towel and dropped it from a second-story balcony. That worked. Landing on concrete, it was semi-granular again. I cooked my sweet squash and traded the sugar with an optimistic neighbor for a bit of maple syrup. Will she hate me? Or does she know something? Okay, that's Brown Sugar Needs a Second Story. And if any of you have ever fought the battle of granite-hard brown sugar, I suspect you'll be sympathetic. The rest of you may not have any idea what I'm talking about. That's it for today. I hope you can enjoy what remains of your day and do so with a smile on your face. Why not? That's another one of the purposes of poetry. Good luck for the coming week and many blessings. And for Lauren, I hope you enjoy your birthday with a delicious piece of cake with or without brown sugar. I wish I were there to share it with you, but happy birthday anyway, my darling. Goodbye to all, and good luck.